In today's work environment, teams, whether standing or project-based, are where a lot of work gets done. When a team is healthy, it's productive, it's resilient against external pressures and short deadlines, and it actually adds to its members' sense of work satisfaction. But some new teams don't gel, and some teams that have been working well for a long time, they hit a bump in the road. The team gets stuck. Everyone knows we have a problem, but no one quite knows what to do about it. Now, you could throw an off-the-shelf teamwork training at it, or a ropes course, or a golf outing, or fill in the blank. Any of these might be appropriate. They might work, but you would be taking the shotgun approach. You don't really know if it will work, and hope is not a great strategy here. Over the next 2 weeks, we're going to discuss how to help stuck teams get unstuck. Today, I'm going to show you how to understand and diagnose what is going on with your team. Next week, we'll talk about what you do to address the issues that you find. The good news, you really can get your team unstuck. You just need a framework for understanding fundamental team dynamics. That may sound complicated, but it really isn't. Let's get started. A fundamental premise is that you're more likely to fix the problem if you understand what it is. So I'm going to show you a relatively simple model which I call the 5 pillars of team development. This model is an evolution of Matt Starcevich's team effectiveness model, which I encountered in the mid-1990s. It contained much of the look of the current model and 4 of the 5 main components, although his specifics and mine differ somewhat. John Maxwell shared with me his team effectiveness questionnaire assessment, which used the same broad categories but added in a lot of the specifics, particularly in the processes pillar. And thanks go to a mentor of mine, George Lawyer. His tactical tools provided simple clarity for the 5th pillar, how leaders effectively interact with teams. Now, I'm not going to say any more about it in today's video, except to note that teams do not exist in a vacuum, and that for a team to ultimately be effective, its work must be aligned with and support the overall mission, vision, and strategies of the larger organization. But assuming that to be the case, the first of the 5 pillars is goals. The team needs to be clear on its direction, how it will be measured, and how far it can go on its own accord. A goals deficiency might show up as a lack of focus, where everything is equally important, or as a shifting focus where the team jumps from one priority to another without a real reason for the change in emphasis. The shorthand for the 2nd pillar is roles. Although it also includes team structure, who we have on the team, who does what, who reports to whom, and so forth. A roles deficiency might show up as dropped balls, or where some members are overloaded while others have little to do. The 3rd pillar is processes, which include both the team's essential work processes, that is, how it creates value for the organization or its customers, and team processes, such as meeting, priority setting, problem-solving, decision-making, and so forth. Every team that has been in existence for any length of time has a process for each of these areas, and most teams have adopted the process that they have without conscious thought or deliberation. Process problems in their various forms usually show up as inefficiency. That is, everything seems to be harder to do than it should be. The 4th pillar is relationships. That is, how well team members know one another, trust one another, support one another, and work through the issues that eventually arise. A deficiency in relationships will frequently show up as a lack of candor when together and not sticking up for one another when absent. The 5th pillar is leadership, and on a team, the leader's role is to ensure the healthy presence of the other 4 pillars. He or she ensures that we have clear goals, appropriate roles and structure, processes that work, and relationships that are real, And while he or she can't necessarily fix a particular issue on their own, they make sure that the team does address the issue and take steps to fix it. So how does one go about discovering the root issues for a team that is stuck? The short answer is do an assessment, which begs the question, how does one do a proper assessment? I mentioned earlier that John Maxwell shared his team effectiveness questionnaire with me, and I use it to this day. Why do I like it? It's wonderfully thorough. There are 112 items that question specifically and deeply into each of the 5 pillars. The goals pillar is segmented into core mission, vision, and values, and objectives. The roles pillar has items on organizational structure, resources, and roles. It investigates processes with specific questions about how the team does meetings, decision-making, conflict resolution, planning, documentation, process improvement, and training. And it digs deeply into relationships within the team and relationships with stakeholders outside of the team. John's team effectiveness questionnaire leaves no stone unturned. You may or may not have access to a similar tool, but don't let that slow you down. Create your own survey. Feel free to question directly to each of the pillars individually if that kind of item development is within your skill set. You can get a lot of data and have the basis for a meaningful discussion on goals by asking and having your team members identify how clear the direction is and the degree to which team members agree with that direction. You can laser in on roles by finding out if team members believe they have the right people on the team, that the work is distributed appropriately, and that the team structure supports goal accomplishment. Include an item on your survey that asks team members how they feel about their processes, and don't forget to delve into the areas of relationship and leadership. And do not worry that this survey of yours hasn't been properly validated. You're not doing academic research. You're just getting team members to talk about what's going on and giving them topics to discuss. It only matters that it's important to them and that they agree on what they're talking about. If surveys aren't your thing, schedule individual interviews. Ask each person to respond to 3 items. Number 1, describe our team. Number 2, what do we do well? And 3, what is the one thing that we could do to improve? Note that the word one is all caps, and that's on purpose. When you ask people to give you just one item, the most important way that we could improve, it focuses their thinking and gives you more specific data. Once you have your data, you'll need to spend some time with it and do some analysis. What does all of this information, and you'll have a lot of it, mean? What are the real issues? Why is the team stuck? With John's team effectiveness questionnaire, I input all of the responses into a spreadsheet that I created. It calculates averages and standard deviations, which tell me which items are statistically significant for this team. It then spits out a graph which shows how the team perceives each of the pillars relative to one another. If you don't have a way of crunching that data, let's say you took the individual interview route, which is just as good, then look for what people are saying over and over again in different ways. Don't neglect significant outliers. Note wherever you hear real passion. Once you've done your analysis and have some way of saying, here is the pillar or pillars where team members see their issues, your assessment work is done. The next step will be to take your findings to the team so that they can discuss and validate the findings. It's the first team intervention, the place you always start when you're doing team development, and where we will pick up next time. Thanks so much for watching today's video, the first part in a 2-part series on how to help a team get unstuck. We introduced the 5 pillars model and detailed the assessment process to identify the real reasons why the team is stuck. In next week's video, we'll discuss possible interventions, that is, ways that you can work with the group depending upon what you uncovered in your assessment. I hope that you'll return to check that out. If you're viewing this video on my YouTube channel, please add your comments and hit the subscribe button. Until next week, thanks for watching.